What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Sun Belt Syndicate, the Belt Baseball Beginners with an S this year. Last year it was just me. Now I've got Seth and Marv alongside with me, presented by College Baseball Dogs as we get a slow start up here, but they are part of the College Football Dogs Media Network of podcasts. So be sure to check out our other shows as well, specifically the Golden Broom as they get going on their baseball coverage as well. This one's going to specifically cover the Sun Belt, and I realized I didn't have any actual Sun Belt baseball shirts, guys. I went with the local Durham Bulls, as Marv well knows, going to some games with his kids throughout his. How many years you've been in the Triangle now, Marv?
Gosh, 11 or 12.
Dang.
Yeah, since 08. Yeah, so shoot, longer than that.
Nice. And
you Braves gear, Dom?
Yeah, well, yeah. I'm not something like that.
Yeah.
They are the local team for us, I guess, right? I guess they're probably about it. They're probably the local team for like
the Nationals are technically closer geographically, but the Nationals are terrible. So,
well, they were good, right?
About 10 years ago.
Steven Strasburg, Bryce Harper.
Yeah, they traded every one of those away.
You need to get on the ball, man. That's a long time ago.
Well, no. But I'm saying when they were on the team. When they're on the team.
Yeah.
They had Juan Soto at that time too.
Yeah, that's crazy. But I guess if you think about it, between the Nationals and Braves, that probably covers like half the Sun Belt as far as like teams that are fans that are likely a fan of one of those two teams. Maybe not the Nationals, I guess. But maybe
our Texas people are probably going to be Rangers or Astros fans.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I'm thinking of the East teams more because you got Georgia State, Georgia Southern. They're probably Braves fans. I would assume. I guess. Well, no. How close is the closest Jacksonville? Because like Statesboro is real close to Jacksonville, but there's not a closest.
No.
Tampa, Miami.
Yeah.
Okay. Nobody's there. There's nobody that's a Devil Rays fan. So
hey, us Durham Bulls people.
Yeah.
We move them up. But going back to that, Marv, also tell people kind of your background in baseball real quick before we get rolling along.
Yeah, I grew up in Greenville, North Carolina, big baseball town. Played baseball pretty much my whole life into my teens. Wasn't ever really good at it, but always loved the game. I got two kids that play ball. I coach in our local Little League, and my son plays travel ball, and I coach on that too. So around the game a lot, and happy to be here talking about college baseball, which, to be honest, I don't know a ton about.
And hey, that's why we got the name of the show. We're all kind of learning in the same process. Seth, let us know. You just covered it a little bit. You're a big Braves fan, but in general, what's your baseball background for everyone?
Grew up playing baseball all through Little League, and when I got into high school, I focused more on football. And then here lately, I've coached the youth team the last 2 years. Don't get to go to as many college baseball games as I'd like, even though during the summer we do go to quite a bit of the Boone Bigfoots. It's like a summer league, wooden bat baseball league. So they take the mid-major like college baseball players, turn it into a summer team. So those are fun to go to. But go to 1 or 2 app games a year, being in Boone all my life. So try to catch as many as we can.
Yeah, very nice. Going to go to some more this year, right?
For sure.
We're definitely going to try and all probably go to. I know Marv and I probably are likely to go to the Duke App State baseball game. They seem to play Duke in the Durham Bulls baseball park of all places. Free attendance for those that happen to be in a triangle. I know the other basis of the show we'll get into before we get too far along here is we're trying to cover every team and not a deep dive. As the show calls itself, the Belt Baseball Beginners, we're not going to be the statistical guys running through a gamut of a bunch of stuff. We'll obviously mention some of that here and there when it makes sense. This one's going to be real an overlook to start the season as we look at kind of what happened last year, what we expect to happen this year. So we'll kind of start with that. I guess, guys, we had 5 teams make at least the regionals, and we had Southern Miss go all the way to super regionals last year. I guess we're all kind of newer to this, but did any of that surprise you? I mean, did you guys know where Sun Belt baseball stood? Or I guess we'll start with Seth at the bottom. I mean, you've been in Boone a little bit longer, even though App's
Right.
still a little newer to the Sun Belt as far as baseball is concerned. But I mean, was them being up towards the top, just outside of those regional teams, is that kind of surprising to you?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but did I see that there was only 3 other conferences plus the Sun Belt that got more than 4+ teams in the tournament? I think it was
I,
the ACC, SEC, and maybe Big
Big 12 and
12,
Pac-12. Big 12 and Pac-12.
Pac-12,
Yeah, we were
Pac-12,
5.
Pac-12. So, baseball, yeah, baseball is a whole nother dynamic. You know, we're all used to watching basketball every Saturday or every Sunday, and you're only getting one team in. So,
yeah.
you know, in baseball, it's a whole nother monster because, I mean, it's such a long season. Anybody can beat anybody. So, I mean, those 4 teams kind of separate themselves throughout the year. So not necessarily surprising, no, but I'm trying to remember back. Southern Miss they had to go to game 3 they were almost in the College World Series, right? Were they in the
I
Super
think
Regional, Southern Miss?
they were.
They
Yeah,
were.
they hosted the Super Regional down there, and I think that was it Tennessee. I think that took them to the limit, right?
Yeah, they beat. I think if I can remember correctly, they beat Tennessee the first game pretty handily, and then it went into game 2, and Tennessee took that, and then I think it had to go late into game 3, and separated. I think Tennessee got in on that game, but then I'm trying to remember back. Did Coastal host the Super, or did they get knocked out in the regional? I can't.
They didn't
No.
make it super.
Yeah,
They didn't
they
make the
were
Super.
hosting their regional and got knocked out in their own regional, which was, I mean, a little surprising. I think, gosh, do you guys remember off the top of your head who they had? Did they have Northeastern in theirs?
I can't remember.
I can't either.
I want to say they did. But anyways, regardless, Marv, I mean, from what you know, what are your thoughts on what we ended up with last year? I mean, I guess the other thing that we can cover here is baseball is a vastly different animal and beast than football and basketball when it comes to where the Sun Belt falls in the hierarchy of good quality conferences. I mean, they might be 4, 5, 6 at the worst, which I guess would actually put them on par with about football. But I mean, where do you think when you think Sun Belt baseball, you're pretty sure that we have quite a few talented teams in this conference?
Yeah, I mean, you got to also keep in mind how much the dynamic of the teams in our league have changed through expansion. So, I mean, if you look at 2 of the teams that made regionals, Coastal fairly new and Southern Miss fairly new as well. Coastal kind of probably the flagship baseball program now, won a national championship less than a decade ago. Southern Miss has always had a good program. I remember when we came into the conference, Louisiana, if I can remember correctly, was kind of the class of the conference. Texas State might be a little surprised, and Troy might be a little bit of a surprise. But kind of looking at what Troy returns this year, they should be well deserving. Towards the top of the league. But with the additions, I think it kind of makes sense where we are because we added some really good baseball programs.
Yeah, Southern Miss
Mark,
definitely takes the cake on that one.
Marv touched on Louisiana. Let's just be real. Us 3, we're huge football guys, and the cream of the crops in Boone. If you're talking about a football atmosphere, and I think if we're talking baseball, our bucket list, from what I've been told, would be Louisiana. Apparently, that's the place to catch a baseball game. It's no matter what day of the week it is. That's the place to be for a baseball game. So, we're new getting into this. We're all football more than anything. But if we're talking baseball, I think from what we've been told, Louisiana is the place to catch a baseball game.
Yeah, I think between Louisiana and Southern Miss. Now, I think why I'd side with you on the Louisiana aspect is because from what I've heard and from what I've experienced for football, that fan base is much more inviting. And it helps that we're an East team when it came to football, right? Like you don't see them real often. There's not a big, massive rivalry that kind of started to be there for those championship games. But they were very inviting people, very awesome people. They love to share their culture and food. Now, Southern Miss is a little bit of that as well, because I've met some Southern Miss fans, and they're very good people and very inviting too. However, I feel like the atmosphere for their baseball is not so inviting. But they sold out season tickets to baseball last season, and they've done it again this year. So as far as a packed house with people going crazy for baseball, Southern Miss to me takes the cake. But as far as going and having an all-around amazing time with stuff away from the field as well, I do think I'd probably favor Louisiana because I feel like that would be a little bit more inviting. I think you guys may have heard this too, but after the game, the boosters or somebody from Louisiana does like a country boil and like lays out all this food, and the guys from like both teams just go through line and get whatever they want. It's not just for Louisiana players. It's like both teams just come grab what you want. Someone can correct us if I'm wrong on that, but that's what I believe I'd heard. And I know, right? Yeah. So it just seems like that would be the place to be. And you're right. I think the Cajuns were coming into this. You know, what's interesting is historically, if you go back even further, South Alabama has been one of the top teams in the Sun Belt, if it were to exist the way it does back then, but certainly just one of the better teams when you look at history. But you can see them now. I think what they finished 11th last year with a 11-19 record in conference and just 23-31 overall. I believe they ended the season on a 4-game winning streak. So maybe a little hope towards this season, but I don't really see them climbing out of the basement. Is there any team, either South Alabama, Arkansas State, ULM, or Marshall, that you guys maybe see takes any kind of big jump, or do you think those kind of 4 teams kind of remain towards the bottom there?
I don't know enough about them to really give an opinion. I mean, just kind of looking at what the coaches are thinking. Obviously, they know the rosters pretty intimately. Those teams are kind of towards the bottom. So, I guess until we see them play and learn a little bit more about them, I can't really make a judgment call.
I'll put up sorry, Seth, put up the preseason coaches poll as you talk about this, Seth. So sorry, go ahead.
No, going along with what Marv said, baseball is kind of a whole nother monster. You're not gonna go from winning 10 games a year to winning all of a sudden 25 the next year. It's a climb each year, and I think the root of it is going to be pitching. Depending on what your pitching looked like the year before, it's not going to make a drastic turnaround in 1 year. So it's kind of a rebuild, not necessarily rebuilding, but it takes a little bit of time. So, maybe you see 4 or 5 wins more this year than say 2 years from now. I think that's when you could really see a turnaround. But, if it's consistently, bottom of the cellar, it's probably at least 2 to 3 years before you could expect anything to even remotely start building up.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how that transfer portal plays into this. We've seen it play pretty prominently in football. It seems like maybe basketball will start to go that direction a little bit more. And it'll be real interesting with baseball because there's just so many other players to grab. I think I was just listening to the Monarchist podcast, which is a ODU podcast for those unaware. They have a baseball-specific podcast. They just got a guy, Christopher Newport, something like that. Anyway, I think it was from there. He's a D2 like national champion, and now he's coming up to ODU to pitch for them this year. So those are the differences that this transfer portal helps make. Obviously, those kind of moves could have happened in the past on one-off. I guess I'm talking about like a big span of it. But just to list off for those that are maybe just listening in the background or listening to the audio version, the coaches poll in order from last to first has Arkansas State, ULM, Marshall, Georgia State, which is a little surprise for me, at 11, JMU at 10, App State at 9, South Alabama they do have at number 8 for preseason, Georgia Southern at number 7, ODU up at number 6, Texas State 5, Cajuns 4, Troy number 3, USM number 2, and number 1, as Marv mentioned, kind of the class of the Sun Belt as is, the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers. I guess we'll come back to this again. I want to jump back into what we think maybe stood out at all from last year as far as big wins that maybe we think we can do, or do we want to jump into kind of how we did against other leagues? Is that a bigger thing to cover? What do you guys think is kind of more important here?
Dom, do you have Coastal's resume in front of you from last year?
I do, sir.
I know Wake Forest, right? That was
yep.
That was a slugfest, correct?
Yeah, they won 13-11 over
13
Wake
to 11.
Forest.
If I'm not
Did they-
mistaken, Wake Forest is preseason number 1 in some polls. I mean,
They got the top 3 pitchers. They got 3 pitchers in the top 10 of pitchers. Yeah.
And as we all know with baseball, pitching wins.
That's your weekend rotation right there. I mean,
Yeah, that's crazy.
I mean, while we're talking about that, just looking at the the preseason players of the year, Troy's ranked 3rd. They've got the preseason starting pitcher of the year and the preseason relief pitcher of the year. So if you want to talk about pitching wins baseball games, they're set up pretty good.
Yeah, and they actually had a pretty decent run in the Sun Belt tournament last year. They got by App in the first round in 10 innings, 10-9. They put up a pretty good fight against Southern Miss, the eventual champions of the tournament, and went down 7-6 to them. And then that put them in the game with App for the second time, I guess, but their third game of the tournament, where they ultimately fell 14-10. But that was just a crazy game. I felt like those two teams were very neck and neck, at least at that point in the season last year. So it'll be interesting to see if Troy can kind of stay on top like that. I think, to me, not knowing fully where they should kind of end up, Troy was a little bit of a surprise to me. So was App, actually, to be honest with you.
Going along with what Marv said, Dom, like pitching's the name of the game. Because if you think about towards the end of the year, you're playing, if you lose in the first round of your conference tournament, you may have to play 4 back-to-back games. You think about it, and then even if you get through your conference tournament, then you go to a best of 3, a regional, you lose that first game, then you're battling back all weekend. Setting your rosters, your pitching, obviously your hitting's going to take you a long way, but your pitching, that's kind of, if you look at the top teams in the Sun Belt, that's where you're seeing your dominant pitching at, and everything else will fall into place after that.
Yeah, I want to amend something I just said. Southern Miss is there's the preseason players of the year. There's 3 starting pitchers, 1 from Troy, 2 from Southern Miss, and the reliever is from Troy as well. So, kind of makes sense why they're at the top. You got to pitch.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. And honestly, I think
consistency. It's consistency. You can, like we talked about, anybody can go out and beat, North Carolina or Wake Forest on a Wednesday, but it's stringing those wins together all year. So it's all about staying consistent.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's why we're seeing Coastal Carolina up at number 1. Obviously, they were very good last year. They won the regular season title. Not that means too much in the end when you bow out ultimately earlier than you want, but apparently that was their kind of weaker spot. I don't know if I call it weak, but that was a spot that they needed a little bit more consistency at, and definitely a little help. Apparently they've done that, and they also had some guys that were younger last year, so now they got a year's worth of experience to lean on, and it makes sense why they're kind of returned to the top of this poll. Obviously, Southern Miss did lose their longtime historic head coach in the offseason, much like App, and we've seen with Louisiana in football. They did keep a guy who's aware of the program and the culture. So I don't really feel like Southern Miss will fall off, and I think that's why you're seeing that respect there at number 2. Cajuns kind of the same way. Again, Troy was consistent, very good last year. They're up there at the top. Texas State. And Texas State's got ability to really be like a ranked team quite quickly. They play a pretty tough schedule up front. They've got a couple ranked teams right off the bat here, I think. And so if they could beat a good number of those or win a good number of those games, I think you're going to find them jumping up to the top of the Sun Belt here very fast before conference play really starts. As far as the big streaks from last year, I mean, Troy, we just spoke about, they strung 11 wins together. So insanely, I think, ODU had 12. I think that was the only team that had a bigger win streak last year. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Missed the obvious one. Southern Miss had 14.
Right.
So that's what you're talking. I mean, 2 of those teams are way up to the top. ODU's kind of sitting there closer to the bottom, which is kind of surprising, but I don't know. I did look up a statistic. ODU hit a ton of home runs last year. I think they were in the top 15 or at least top 20 in home runs on the year across all of college baseball. So it seemed like the run support was there. The defense maybe let up more than they should, and the pitching obviously wasn't as good to keep them.
Well, also, I mean, I don't have a stat sheet in front of me, but when you live by the home run, you die by the home run. So it could be one of those situations where you're either going a long way or you're sitting on the bench. So either a long bomb or a strikeout. So could go either way on that.
Very true. Very true. Let's see. You guys want to go and jump into opening weekend matchups here real quick?
Yeah, let's do it.
100%, yeah.
Let's do it. Oop. All right. So we've got the two Georges up against ODU and Coastal Carolina. So George Washington will travel to ODU. A quick, I'll favor ODU. Anybody taking the upset in that one, or everyone think ODU will take care of business in that one?
I'm going to go with ODU at home. George Washington wasn't that great last year. So, yeah, I'll take ODU.
Yeah.
This is pretty tough to do at the beginning of the season, especially not knowing a whole lot about it. Maybe in 2 or 3 weeks we can do this a little bit better. But
Seth being on the road doesn't have the advantage of everything in front of him. But I'll just go ahead and tell you that George Washington was a 21-34 record overall last season. I believe they played James Madison last year, and James Madison beat them. I think swept them. At least won the series with them pretty soundly. So that hopefully goes ODU's way. Now next one's interesting. Marv, if you want to take that George Mason versus Coastal Carolina, what do you think happens in that one with George Mason, having been in regionals last year? Yeah,
I mean, I don't know what they return. So that's kind of the unknown factor for me. And hell, I don't even know what Coastal returns, obviously. But, a lot of people think they're going to be good. Their preseason, I think they're 18th kind of consensus. I think that could be a sneaky good matchup. It wouldn't surprise me if George Mason took one, but I'm going to take Coastal to take the series.
Yeah. Seth favoring them at home.
I think it's that Coastal culture. You wonder why it's consistently the top teams every single year. Coastal, SMU, Southern Miss. You look at like football. It's the same teams every year because it's that culture. They recruit. You recruit those kids that for that certain reason, and let's just be honest. Coastal recruits baseball players, so it's a juggernaut every year. Like Marv said, like a sweep is tough, but I would expect Coastal to take at least 2 or 3.
Yeah, no, I definitely would too. And like you said, it's a little easier to recruit guys for baseball when you're real close to the beach.
Yeah, and you've won a national championship.
Yep. Yeah. And you got a nice stadium. I mean, Coastal's, I walked by it for football. They got a beautiful stadium down there in Conway. So speaking of cultures, Arkansas host James Madison. Any chance, JMU can steal a game? Because I don't think they're taking that series.
Woo pig.
It's baseball. There's always a chance. Who knows? Maybe JMU has a stud that just throws a gem and, they get a couple runs. But Arkansas is pretty darn good. Wouldn't be surprised to see them in Omaha if they live up to the expectation. So I'm gonna get the broom out on that one.
Yeah, I think I'm favoring the broom there too. First series of the year, and you're going against a team that went 43-18 last year, knocked out in regionals. They didn't quite make super regionals, but they were.
Didn't Tennessee do the same thing 2 years ago? Weren't they the number one seed, and they got knocked out of regionals, or it might have been supers. It seems like anything could happen when you hit your regional tournament. Anybody can get hot at the right time. Sorry to go down a whole nother road there, but you were talking about Arkansas not living up to expectations in the postseason. But yeah, I'm all for the Pigs this weekend for sure.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's too much strength over there with the Razorbacks. Marshall, one of the worst, actually the worst team in the conference of last year, takes on College of Charleston, who went 36-22. This one may be another sweep, but I don't know. I guess on the basis of this, do you think Marshall makes any kind of big jump? And to note why they may have had such a bad record last year, if you don't know, they were not playing any games at home. Their stadium was under construction, so they played in like a minor league ballpark that I think was at least half an hour, if not a little further away. Wow, so okay. They're going to be playing in the comfy confines of home. Not in this series. They're going to go down to Charleston for this one, but for this year, they'll be back in a real, true, tried and home stadium of their own. So not only do they stand much of a chance against Charleston, but do you think they just ultimately have a better season this year because of that? Marv, we'll start with Marv, I guess.
Once again, don't know enough about their program. Don't know anything about their history in baseball. I know they got a great soccer program. Got a little history with College of Charleston from the old Sun Belt days. And College of Charleston looks like they're a pretty decent baseball team. Once again, it's baseball. Could they win the game? Yeah. Could they win the series? Yeah. But not knowing anything, if I had to put my money on it, I'd say College of Charleston gets the win. And once again, the coaches know a heck of a lot more than we do. Not like coaches have never been wrong and pick someone to be at the top and they weren't that great, or pick someone to be at the bottom. They had a great season, but I just don't see it.
Yeah. No, I don't either. I'm all in on the Cougs this weekend. Like we talked about earlier, you hardly ever see a team go from the bottom to even jump in 3 or 4 spots in 1 year, but it could be a long year in Huntington. I'm all over the Cougs this weekend.
You're a fan of the Cougars, Seth? Is that what you're trying to say?
Oh yeah, go Charleston. Charleston's got a good football team too.
Yeah.
Still undefeated.
Yes,
never lost. Oh man. All right. So some of our hometown teams, really, App State going to Gardner-Webb, traveling off the mountain as they typically do to start the year with the winter weather they got up there. Seth, any snow on the ground in Boone still right now, or is it all?
Yeah, there was a little bit of snow this morning. I was hitting golf balls last week, and now there's snow all over the ground, but not necessarily the disadvantage that Marshall has. But I was looking up ASU's schedule a day or two ago, and it's a solid month or a month and a half before there's even a home game in Boone. It's hard to even get into baseball in Boone until at least after Easter. So it's not to say people don't come out and watch them, but it's hard to get into it until the weather breaks in Boone, which is usually mid-April. So I don't know a lot about App this year. I know that they lost their Friday guy, Xander. He was a stud.
He was a stud.
That was their stud, and not real sure. I know they got one guy on the first team all Sun Belt, right?
Yep.
Outfielder.
Yep.
Okay. Other than that, I don't know a whole lot. No.
Yeah. And I think I know even less about Gardner-Webb. I mean, Marv, I assume you think App will take this first series, whether it's 2-1 or 3-0, I guess is the big question mark, maybe?
I mean, I would hope so. Being an App fan, Gardner-Webb was 31-25 last year. Don't really know who they played. I would like to think we could take 2 or 3. That would be a good start to the season. I felt like we played a lot of our better baseball at the end of the season last year, and hopefully we can continue that momentum. But we did lose our stud pitcher, so got to replace him. Got to get the bats going and see what happens.
Yeah. Of note, App only strung 3 straight wins together last year. Now they did it 3 times. But that was their longest streak. But they did lose 6 straight at one point. I think, like you said, Mark, that was towards the beginning of the season there. I think they had actually like a really good start, like 4-5-0.
It was like a 7-0 start, and then it kind of went downhill.
Did they take 2 or 3 from Coastal or just one?
Just one. They had he threw a Jim. I think he struck out like 11 or maybe 13 batters, won the first game, and then just couldn't get another one. I think the third game was close, but I think the second game was pretty heavily Coastal.
Gotcha.
Makes sense. They did note their first ever series victory over the Cajuns last year, 2-1 down there in Lafayette. So that was cool. That was impressive to see. And so we'll see if they can get off to a hot start. I don't think this next one's much of a question. Anybody think Marist stands any chance against a team like Southern Miss down there in Hattiesburg?
Marist was 16-36 going against a team that went to a super regional. Nah, give me the broom on that one.
No chance.
Yeah. All right. That one was quick. I don't know if this next one will be much different. And Troy is playing host to SIUE, and I had to look it up. I honestly couldn't figure out where this school was at. So this is Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville, which is like way too long of a name. So now you see why they call themselves SUI. I think is that SUI? Is that how they say it?
I have no clue.
I'm new to the first timer on that one too, buddy.
Yeah,
Sure.
I
I'm
think
sure
I
it's a
think they just
fantastic campus.
they kind of nicknamed it Suey so they don't have to spell out the letters and say the whole name, I believe. But again, I could be wrong on that. But yeah, they were just 26 and 28 last year, so not terrible, flirting with 500. And we really don't know the ins and outs of their schedule, right? But with where Troy is coming in, I expect much of the same that we'll see as in the Southern Miss Marist matchup. I guess is that you guys think a sweep also kind of likely here in this one?
Yep.
Who do they have? I'm sorry.
The Suey guys,
Oh,
the Southern
okay.
Illinois University of Edwardsville.
Uh, like Marv said earlier, anything can happen in baseball. But if we had to lean one way, I think we both know which way we're going.
Yeah. All right, here's a good one. Maryland travels to Statesboro, Georgia to take on Georgia Southern. And to note, Maryland 42 and 21 last year, made it to the regional round. I think they were in a regional with
They might have been in Winston-Salem.
that might be right. I think
Okay.
because I think I saw that. Yeah, I believe you're right. I think it was them up against Wake Forest because they're now in the Big Ten, so that wasn't an inter ACC matchup as it would have been many years ago.
Wow, where have you been? Good.
But yeah, I guess now Georgia Southern, I mean, they've got a baseball program down there, and I guess
Do they still have baseball there?
sometimes they
Okay.
like to play.
I got you.
They note that they did get beat in the very first round of the Sun Belt tournament last year by Georgia State, not Southern, 8-5. So they're not going to like that too much. But what's the again? We're going for a big overview, so we don't have to let everybody know we don't know the ins and outs. But if you had to put money on it, you think Georgia Southern could steal one here? You think they could possibly even take the series? I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a flip of the coin. You got Maryland coming in off a great year last year, and then you have Georgia Southern that you don't know which team you're going to get. So, like I said a couple of times, maybe our third week into this, we're going to know a lot more about a lot more teams. I feel like you're going to need what would you think, Marv? At least 10 to 15 games, a little sample size before you can start really getting into making some serious predictions.
Yeah, I think a couple weekends of seeing your weekend rotation run will kind of tell you what that's going to look like, and then what the bats look like. So yeah, I think we're probably a month away from really knowing what everyone has. I think you'll have some teams that you expected to be really good, start off really good, but you're a month away from seeing anything shocking.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And again, like you guys said, I feel like those one-off games where you just match up once on a Tuesday games, like you said, anything can happen there. You're throwing probably a guy that doesn't see the field as much, right? Marv, is that kind of what you see even in the younger kid stuff? And Seth, you as well? Like, is that kind of what happens?
Yeah, I mean, the crazy thing about baseball is, especially with as many games as they play, you could be 5 games out and close within 5 games in a week and a half. So, like Marv was saying, a slow start doesn't necessarily mean it's the end of the world, but you could pick up 3 games in 3 days. So, I mean, baseball's a whole nother animal, man. There's somebody could be on one day and somebody could be off, and anybody could be anybody. It's like what we touched on earlier. It's consistency. It's stringing those wins together week through, week in and week out. So baseball is just about putting them together, man.
Yeah.
But going back to this series, my inner app fanhood will not allow me to pick Georgia Southern to win this series. So I'm going to go Maryland. Secretly, I would like Georgia Southern to take 2 out of 3 just because it's going to be a bolster for the conference.
Yep.
But I hope they get beat by 20.
Well, hey, while we're on the subject of like Big Ten and ACC here too, with a couple of these recent ones we talked about, to note that the conference as a whole, Sun Belt, against the SEC and ACC last year was 9-34.
Ooh.
Mercy.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Now, had 5 wins against the SEC and 4 against the ACC, but you had 16 losses to the SEC and 18 to the ACC. So we've got to step our game up there. Just to note, Big 12, 4-7, not bad. I mean, I think throughout last year's podcast that I did solo, I was referencing between the Big 12 and Sun Belt who was the better conference throughout much of the season. And that 4-7 mark kind of shows that. I think, I don't know how many matchups we have against them this year, but I feel like if it was the Sun Belt 7 and Big 12 4 this year, it wouldn't shock me in the least. So
I'm gonna take the train off the track just a little bit.
Yeah,
this is a homer statement, but what year? Remind me, didn't App go to LSU and take? Was it 2 or 3 they took?
They did take 2 or 3. That was a
2 or 3?
long time ago. I think that was
back when Maryland was in the ACC, right?
Yeah, well, I think we made a regional. If I'm not mistaken, we made a regional that year.
That's when Pollard, right?
Yeah, who's now at Duke.
They went
baseball coach.
They beat Virginia, and then they beat Oklahoma. And Oklahoma had to beat them twice.
Yep.
And then Oklahoma beat them twice, and Oklahoma went to Columbia and got smacked by South Carolina. Yeah.
And I think right after that, Pollard left to go to Duke, and he's been there ever since.
Never left.
Turn them into a powerhouse. I mean, Marv, do you have the overall rankings or predictions in front of you with where Duke's supposed to be this year? They're up there in the top 10 or something.
They're in top 10.
They've been a solid. I mean, ACC's got several teams. UNC, NC State, Wake Forest. I mean, ACC's
Virginia.
a baseball conference. Yeah.
And to note, I think there's a couple teams. I think Coastal goes to Wake Forest and UNC this year. So they're coming kind of close by to the three of us.
Coastal comes to Boone this year too.
They do? I forgot about that.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. That's a big one for sure.
Duke's number 12.
Okay. 12. Okay. Yeah. So just outside, but with literally the first series or first weekend series, they may jump into the top 10 depending on what happens above them. All right, we'll jump back into this. Arkansas State, Omaha. I really don't know what to make of this one either. Omaha was only 21-28 last season, but Arkansas State was 20-31. So pretty much identical records, really. Maybe I'm favoring Arkansas State because they're opening at home with Omaha traveling on the road.
Yeah, that's a coin flip to me. I'm going to take the home team. It can be 2-1 either way.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I have seen something where Arkansas State has put some really good players in MLB and stuff. Though maybe I'll favor them to take that one 2-1 since they have some players. It just seems like the team here lately hasn't been the greatest. Youngstown State. This is the advantage the Sun Belt has, right? Talked about this last year, but it seems true again this year. A lot of these teams that are in the colder, bad weather to start the baseball season are traveling down to warmer Sun Belt climates. It's a pretty big advantage to host some of these larger teams, especially Big Ten teams, to have them come down to the Sun Belt early on. That's not what's happening exactly in this matchup, but Youngstown State up there in Ohio is going to travel down to San Marcos to play Texas State. Youngstown State, what are we looking at here?
1936 last year.
Whew. I'm favoring Texas State in a sweep here, boys. I don't know if you guys feel any different in that one.
I can see it.
Yep.
Yeah, I think too much power there. Wright State is going to take on Louisiana, a sneaky one. I mean, when I think of baseball, I never think of Wright State. But what do you guys think? I mean, this is a team that made regionals last year, 39-23 overall, while the Cajuns, were sitting there at 40-22. Also, both of them made, the regional aspect. So
I think this is another one that could go either way. We sound like a broken record, but it could either go a sweep or, 2-1, whatever it may be. Once we get some games under our belt, I think this is going to be a heck of a lot easier to try to, and we can actually put some stats with it at that point too.
Yeah, that's true. Some streaks or something. If a team.
I have an idea as I'm sitting here thinking about this.
Yeah.
Something that would be fun each week if we had a list of games, like how they do on College Game Day, you have a guest picker and you keep the standings of maybe we could pick 3 series each week, and then we'll keep a running tally, and then whoever loses has to streak at the next football game or something, something.
I can have my oldest son Mason get up here and just give you his his listening to his dad's Sun Belt bias.
That kid's a ringer, Marv. It's not fair. I told Dominic, I told Marv the other day, have you seen the movie Moneyball?
Yep.
That's Marv's 8-year-old son.
Okay. So we do need to include him.
Yeah, that kid could be on. He could be here with us, and he would know more stats than the three of us combined.
He's a future front office guy in baseball for sure. The way that we were flipping through baseball cards the other night, and I mentioned a card, and he was just like, "That's in a different case," and goes to it, flips to the card, and was like, "That's where it is right there." Like he has a catalog of where all of his cards and can tell you where they played, when they were drafted, what their stats were. I don't know, it scares me.
Yeah.
Dang. Yeah, we do need to put him on this because then, like at the end of the year, we'll all look foolish and they'll be like, "Hey, give this kid a podcast and let these other three schmucks go do something else."
Yeah. Seriously.
No, but Seth, I do love that idea. So I'll give us some homework, maybe not tonight, but at some point before this weekend, we'll at least put the first one together. Like you said, we won't do every series, but we'll do a couple here or there. Maybe the big ones to start off with. I think that's an awesome idea. So be on the lookout for that on social media from each of us. ULM and Missouri State, again, probably falls in that same kind of category. Missouri State 33-23. ULM was 17-37.
I'm taking Missouri State 2-1. Go
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I'm going to go the other way on this one.
Yeah. I think, Seth, that might have been one you might have gone to last year, or I asked you about at some point, because I know ULM went up to App and beat actually, I think they won that series 2-0. I think I have it marked down here. Yeah, they had the 2-0 series win over App State because the last game was canceled due to weather. So it seems like, with what App had done last year, they were a pretty good team. ULM went up there to their home place and beat them there twice. Who knows what would have happened in the third game? But yeah, I mean, I see like what you're saying there, Marv. Missouri State's probably the better team in and out, but ULM seems like they had the talent to at least take one away. Hopefully they can take two because they're playing at home, but we'll see. I wouldn't favor that, I guess. Like you said, there's probably not putting any money on that one. Maybe ask your son for some tips on that one, right?
He's going to be like, "Who's Missouri State?"
But then he would tell you who played there, and it would make sense.
True. You'd be like, "Oh, by the way, so and so went there."
Yeah, that's awesome, man. One day I was like that with hockey. Back in the day, I was like that with hockey. Not so much anymore. You get a real job and stuff you have to actually care about.
No, not me, dude. Not me. I could do college football all day long. I could tell you exactly where they played and when they played there.
It's true. Back to the wing tee and everything else.
Oh yeah.
All right, two more series to talk about real quick. Georgia State goes up against New Orleans. This New Orleans team seems to be all over Sun Belt schedules. I guess probably because they're just kind of right there in the heart of Sun Belt West teams. I know there's not an East-West in baseball, but essentially they're right there as an easy schedule, not a bad travel. But this one's going to have Georgia State going down to them, and they were 36-24 last year, so a pretty good baseball team overall. And Georgia State probably not really respected. What did we have them in that poll?
They are
11th.
11th, yeah.
Whew. I don't know about that. I thought they had a pretty good year last year overall, so I don't know. I mean, like I said, they had a play-in game in the Sun Belt tournament. They had that one-off game, winner go home, and then they got in there and they didn't do any real damage. But I don't know. This one wouldn't surprise me either way. I guess I don't think any one team is way higher than the other from what I've seen from what I've read.
I don't think so.
I'm going to go New Orleans. They're better record playing at home. Zero logic behind that.
It's New Orleans.
Yeah,
Mardi Gras. It's Mardi Gras, Marv.
Yeah. Oh, it is Mardi Gras.
It's
Yes,
Mardi
Georgia
Gras.
State's going to go down there and hit Bourbon Street, and then
New Orleans by a million.
Yeah.
That's a smart pick because distractions. You're right.
Hey, note that, and let's talk about that next week. We'll see how New Orleans did over the weekend.
Okay. No, that's a good one. That's a good one. So the last one to finish up with here before we talk quickly kind of about maybe where we expect with our very, very small amount of expertise, if you even want to use that word with us. But South Alabama hosts North Alabama. So it's the Civil War of Alabama, guys. I mean, there's nothing more exciting than a North Alabama, South Alabama matchup in any sport.
I think they've got that on ESPN this weekend, actually.
Yeah, headline game.
You know what's disappointing is that the app series is not on ESPN Plus, so we're not even going to be able to watch them play. But
really,
yeah. But just going back to this matchup, North Alabama was 14-37 last year.
Mercy.
And South Alabama is kind of mid-tier Sun Belt, so I'm going for the South in this one to prevail.
I'll go with you.
I was going to say, Seth, is the South rise again?
Could care less about this one, but yeah, let's do it.
Well, what's interesting to me is that the coaches seem to think that South Alabama is going to make one of those, like you said, not massive jumps, but a couple games, because they've got them jumped over App State and James Madison in the preseason coaches poll, which, again, besides that 4-game win streak, I think I said to end the season last year, I don't know what you see that makes you think that they're going to be tremendous. Maybe they've got some players coming in that I haven't heard about. But I haven't heard a bunch of noise from South Alabama fans even beating their chest about how good they're going to be. So It'll be interesting to see what they do there. So I guess we'll bring up the preseason coaches poll once again. You guys think anything again from our outlier overall outlook perspective? Anything that you really disagree with here, or do you think this is pretty well known here by the coaches? They know what they're doing, or what?
I mean, I think you can only go off based off last year's record. We don't know a whole lot about who's returning and who they lost and things like that. But based off last year's record and who Coastal, to me, looking at do they deserve it is based off who their top wins last year. Knocking off a Wake Forest, did they knock North Carolina? Is that right?
I think they split with Carolina, if I believe. I think they won and lost.
Okay. All right. It just goes to show you that they can play in the top games and play under pressure. And that's not to say, a Southern Miss or a Troy or a Louisiana couldn't do something. I think it's going to be fun watching it play out for sure. A lot of the big games come at the beginning of the season or, midweek, and we'll kind of, as they say, the cream rises to the top. So we'll see before too long for sure.
Yeah, Marv, thoughts on this one?
I mean, just looking at it, the conference is kind of top heavy, to be honest with you. I can see the top 5 teams being the top 5 teams, maybe not in that specific order. And then it's just kind of everybody else trying to take a step forward for the next year. But yeah, once again, not knowing the rosters in depth for every team, let it play out and kind of see if the coaches were right. But I think we're a top heavy league.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with that. I mean, if I had to favor anybody making regionals, again, it's definitely the top 5 as they current, like you said, in whatever order. It's the top 5 as they currently are. There's 2 big jumps that I noted. ODU ended last season in 10th place, and they start off this year as an expected 6th place finish. So I believe they think that the pitching and the defense probably picks up a little bit from where they left off last year, and I would assume they think the bats are going to kind of stay pretty consistent as far as the long ball is concerned. So that one's an interesting one because that puts them just outside that top 5. And they had that 12-game win streak. So they can string some things together. South Alabama jumping over again, App State and James Madison at number 8. I don't know about that one. I mean, they did win 4 games in a row 3 different times, but they had a losing streak of 10 straight games. I don't know if I see like a 2-team jump there.
These preseason polls, I believe, are just something just so we have something to talk about. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Will Coastal be there at the end of the year? They'll probably be in the top 3 for sure. They don't mean anything, man. The baseball can bounce either way. It's just this is based on who's returning and based off last year. Any team could get hot at any time and make a run, but as we touched on earlier, a team that won maybe 10 games last year, it's going to be tough to see them at the top. But this is just these preseason rankings are just something for people like us to talk about. So anything could happen for sure.
Seth, you don't see Arkansas State making it to Omaha?
They may make it to the Super, but I don't know if they got enough pitching to make it to Omaha. No, I don't.
It'll be interesting to see as it shakes out how correct this is, and anybody want to make a prediction on how many teams make a regional?
Ooh, yes. I wanted to ask that question too. So great question, Marv.
I'm gonna say 3.
3.
I'm
gonna go 4.
Okay.
I was gonna say I think 5 was kind of the Cajuns had to go on that run in the tournament last year to get in. If we're being honest, I don't think without maybe they could have lost in the championship game to Southern Miss, but I think winning that definitely put them in. Otherwise, we were looking at 4.
What's kind of the
I don't think-
target? Is it 30 wins for baseball? Is that kind of what we're targeting for an at-large almost?
I mean, App won 30 last year and probably wasn't anywhere near being considered, to be completely honest.
Yeah,
Okay.
you had.
I'm going to say 35.
35.
Yeah, and I would say it may even be more than that. I mean, you're looking at Missouri State won 33 games last year. New Orleans won 36. Neither one of those teams were considered. I don't remember hearing their names being mentioned. Maybe New Orleans was kind of just outside, but I never heard with all the talk that I was trying to follow along and listen to them being mentioned. So I'm thinking you got to be dang close to 40 wins. I mean, just shy, but
Gotcha.
yeah, I'm thinking it's a higher mark now than it used to be. But yeah, I do agree with one more one I'll speak about. Georgia State drops back a little bit, but it's not a huge drop. It's 3 spots, so we'll see if that one comes to fruition. I do kind of agree that Marshall jumps up from the basement again, playing in a real true home stadium this time. I think that's probably good for like 5 to 7 wins right there, just because they'll be used to not having to travel as far and more consistency with playing at their home place. So I guess that pretty much wraps it up, unless you guys have anything else to mention in this first ever 3-person baseball podcast that we're going to be running.
So when we meet again, we'll have at least 3 games probably under our belt. Is that right?
It'll be more than that because
Probably midweek games as well, so probably 4.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a couple teams. One of the teams I was just looking at, I can't remember off the top of my head. One of these teams finishes their series on Monday instead of Sunday, I believe.
Okay.
Or they put it on the schedule in case of like a weather thing or something. I'm not really sure what they were doing, but yeah, we'll have to off air. We'll have to decide when our next one is. But typically, I think and believe for all the people viewing or listening in, we're going to try and do this on Sunday evenings live in the near future, right?
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That'll
That'll give us a good opportunity to kind of wrap up all the action that just happened over the weekend, and then kind of quickly preview the week. 1 or 2 off games during the week, and then the next upcoming series that'll happen over the weekend. That's the nice thing about baseball. It's very consistent in that regard, right?
Right.
Lots of games, but consistency as far as like you don't have like a random week and a half off here and there type of thing. So guys, thanks for coming on this first one, and we'll look forward to doing it again, and we'll see you guys all next time.
Sounds good.
Thanks, buddy.